Yeah, so that's, I was spending that money on that house and everything, and I also said, well, I'll be in like a nicer area, so I'll attract families that have kids to sign up for guitar lessons that can afford it and stuff. So all that helped. But when I stopped doing music and was just playing poker, and now I found myself in this 3-bedroom house that I didn't need anymore, and I started looking for, apartments and stuff, and found like, well, a lot of those cost just as much, and then it just kind of like happened. The Jacksonville thing was like a really quick decision, and anyways, but I ended up, going there, and it, if you keep looking at the bio thing here, it was going well, and around May 2015, I was like, I wanted to get back to some. I felt like I was caught up on my studying. I wanted to get back to some Skype coaching with Bill. And, he was always really quick to reply to emails like the same hour or whatever. If you emailed him, even, he was just always at his computer. And I emailed him. I didn't hear back all day. Didn't hear back the next day. And then I was talked to some other students of his. I was like, have you heard from him? No, he didn't show up for my lesson, which never happened or anything. I started to think something was wrong. Well, anyways, he had actually committed suicide, man. It was awful. Like and I had never, it's all the things you hear about like, oh, I never got to say goodbye and all this stuff. And I wonder if I could have said something, and nobody saw it coming or anything. Like, he didn't seem depressed or anything. And that's a whole nother conversation, but basically it was obviously like really, really, I was like tremendously upset, and he was like the only poker mentor I ever had. And, so I chose like to not, I was like, oh, no one can replace him right now, and so I just didn't look for another coach then, but I ended up getting really into like some Ed Miller books, 3 books, particularly The Course,
Poker's 1%.
Yeah, but I got that, but I felt like it was a little bit above my level, or I wasn't ready to apply it yet, but I have that one. But, though it is really accessible when I look at it now, but it was really, The Course and is it called Playing the Player? Yeah, those 2 really. And then Poker's 1%, but honestly I haven't delved too much into that one yet.
I'll give you my thoughts on all of that. So
yeah.
Number one, Ed Miller is a really good dude that has good intentions. He's also very intelligent and an excellent writer. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But one thing that I would say is that when it comes down to trying to find a poker coach, right, that person is a consultant. And when it comes down to finding the best consultant for your business,
mm-hmm.
there are 2 things that you need to ask yourself. The first one is, has that person had success in his field of expertise? The second one is, has that person been able to duplicate the success in his own life and the lives of others? Okay.
Right.
And for Ed Miller, I would say no. If you go and look on his Hendon Mob, like in tournaments, he's had mild success. I think he has about $500K in tournament cashes, right? Mm-hmm. Lifetime though. I mean, 'cause he's double my age. Okay.
Yeah.
Other thing is, he's no longer playing cash games professionally. He is a professional poker author and game theorist. He is not a professional poker player.
Right.
And lastly, I haven't seen him exhibit the ability to duplicate success in other people. In other words, I haven't seen someone say that like they are willing to attribute the majority of their success to something that Ed Miller said or did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, if you take somebody like him who is very intelligent and he's written eight books, they're all very good, by the way. Okay? That's fine, but if you compare him to me, like there's a significant difference, right? One, I've actually had success in my field of expertise in more than one game. Tournaments, no limit cash, and like very large pot limit Omaha games, right?
Sure.
So I've done all that. Okay, I've created success in my own life. Okay, but then like you know. At the same time, like if you ask me who do I want to get coaching from, do I want to get coaching from Michael Jordan or Phil Jackson or like Coach Krzyzewski? right? As far
Yeah.
as it pertains to basketball, like I would always pick Phil Jackson over Michael Jordan because Phil Jackson has been able to duplicate his success over and over and over again
Yeah.
in other people. Michael Jordan hasn't been able to do that. He was the best player that ever lived, but he hasn't been able to
That's true.
create other players that are elite. Okay.
Hmm.
So I think when it comes down to finding a poker coach, you have to also consider like the second aspect of that. Like, has someone been able to duplicate his success in other people? And I definitely have. I have, 200 testimonials from people that would say that like I have significantly changed the way they think about poker. So
Cool.
always take everything with a grain of salt, and not just as far as it goes with poker, because um, like this whole coaching thing, people will mention that I coach at the table, and I'll kind of get some backlash from that, right? Or other students will say like Hunter made a tremendous difference in my life, and they'll tell somebody else, and they'll kind of get mocked for it, right? But the one thing I would say is like the people that are mocking them are one, uninformed, or two, misinformed, and three, like unopen to new ideas, and four, probably lacking in intelligence as a result. Okay,
Yeah.
because like an intelligent person would want to be informed with the correct information, unbiased information, and two, they would be open to new ideas, right?
Right.
Um, like anyway, as far as coaching goes, when it comes down to finding a consultant, um, all of the best CEOs in the world, all the highest performing athletes in the world are actively seeking out people that specialize in areas that can help them. You know,
Hmm.
it doesn't really matter who you are. If you're Ray Dalio, like multi-billionaire hedge fund manager, right? Or if you're Princess Diana, or somebody else, like they all hired Tony Robbins. They all needed a lifestyle coach, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? It's because they seek out the best, and they want to know um, what series of actions did those people take to create that success. Can it be duplicated? I want to implement that in my life. Okay. And
Yeah. Absolutely.
like for me, I'm constantly seeking out people, and I'm not always exchanging money for advice. A lot of times I'm exchanging services for advice, or just contact info for advice, whether it's like a workout regimen, or a dietitian, or a club promoter, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
I'm exchanging poker advice for services, and so I don't see anything wrong at all with getting coaching, and never think that there's something wrong with
Oh
that.
no. In fact, like I've found it's like the most effective way for me to learn. First of all, because for you can't look at a book and like ask a question or say, yeah, but what about this, or you. And also the fact that people always make the argument that, yeah, but books or video subscription sites, it's so much more affordable and everything. I said, yeah, but that actually makes you okay when you invest like significant money into something like coaching, like you are invested more into getting something out of it. So like if I'm playing like $200 an hour and then I get homework, it's like I'm gonna sure as hell do that homework because I know I've got to show up next week or whenever
No,
and
I
be
mean,
held accountable for that
the
too.
Alan
So
Weiss, the
yeah,
author
yeah,
of Getting
yeah.
Started in Consulting, and The Millionaire Consultant, and like 10 other books that were all bestsellers on consulting, says the same thing. When he was starting out, he got fired as CEO of a major consulting firm, and he basically said, "Enough is enough. I don't need any of you
Hmm.
to be a top notch consultant. I'll do it all myself." Which everybody told him he was totally insane, including his wife, right? And he starts
Hmm.
his own consulting firm, and ends up being one of the highest paid consultants in the world, doing it all himself. This guy, like, for a long time, he didn't even have an accountant, or a marketing director, or an assistant, or an attorney. Like, he just did it all himself. And one of the things that he said was really interesting. He said that like when starting out, he would do pro bono work for nonprofit organizations, and he would come in and do a motivational speech, or a strategic counseling speech, or some kind of like business optimization speech for various nonprofits. Not like just to add credibility to what he was doing. So like at the bottom of his website, he could be like, as featured in XYZ
Yeah.
nonprofit, right? And he said nobody would pay attention to anything that he had to say. Everybody was on their Blackberries at the time, just texting, and phones would ring in the background, and nobody really cared, like about what he was teaching. But then, that same year, after doing all of this, eventually he gets a handful of companies under contract for sizable contracts. They want him to come in and teach their marketing department or their HR department, things that he felt were important to be successful. And because they had him under a 50K contract, those employees like had all of their phones turned off. They have a notepad in front of them. Their MacBooks are ready to go, and they are attentive. You could hear a pin drop, right?
And when they're perceiving, and all of a sudden they're perceiving the value so much higher.
It's not that the value changed; the perception of the
right.
value changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, like sometimes, like in order to really affect change in somebody's life, you need to charge them more, actually, so that it's psychologically impactful to them, and that's so counterintuitive. You would think that like if somebody is rational and capable of learning, it wouldn't matter what you're charging them. But he found that to be the opposite, and I've also found it to be the opposite too. When I was charging $100 an hour for coaching, a lot of my students wouldn't do any of the homework that I sent them. Right, or they would.
You're going to attract. Yeah, and you're going to attract more dedicated people. I found the same thing with guitar teaching.
Yeah, and they or they'd show up late or cancel last second. But since I've raised the price to $200 an hour, all of that's been eliminated. Everybody that I'm coaching shows up on time, and they're ready to do their homework, and they're valuing my time because they've decided to commit, and they believe that whatever I have to say is more important than what these other coaches have to say.
And it weeds out the people who aren't willing to do it, so you get more people that are dedicated, which creates this good cycle of like the more dedicated students you have, the more successful they're going to be, which is going to make you more happy and motivated about teaching, and it's going to, you know what I mean? It just
absolutely. When we were in Jacksonville, you mentioned that you're a big fan of the 4-hour work week, right?
No, you told me to read it. I haven't yet, but we're just talking.
Oh, okay, I could.
Check it out.
I knew that we either talked about it or you said that you liked it. It was a while ago, but one of the things that Tim Ferriss is really big on is like the 80-20 principle, where like in almost everything there are non-linearities, meaning like 20% of what you do will create like 80% of the results in your life, and a lot of times like 20% of the mistakes that you make will cause like 80% of the problems in your life. And one of the things that like he does when he goes in to consult with somebody like Evernote or Uber is he just cuts the fat. Like we need to just fire all of these people instead of hiring more people for an inefficient system. He's saying get rid of all the unnecessary people and optimize the system, and then once you have it optimized, make it bigger. Okay.
I think what you're probably thinking of is what I said was I thought about for a while of getting coaching from you, and I had this stupid idea in my head of like, well, I'm not good enough yet to get coaching from him. He's so much smarter with the stuff than I am. I need to learn certain things by myself before I can do it. So like, okay, I'll join like these subscription video sites. I'll read more books and then I would find like I would keep putting that stuff off too, and like never feel ready. And I was like, this is stupid. Why do you hire a coach? Is because you need help with things. You might as well immediately just go to that. And I shouldn't be embarrassed that I don't know, basic stuff. That's what you
never be embarrassed. I mean, I mentioned the 80-20 principle for two reasons. Like the first one is that since raising my prices, I've like probably decreased my client base by about 20%. But the 20% of the people that I eliminated were causing 80% of the problems. They were the late shows or the people that weren't sending payments, right? The 80% that stayed were much more committed to getting better, and they actually produced results in their lives. And the 80-20 principle also applies to what you're studying, right? For months, you were studying books that didn't create change in your life. They weren't actionable, right? They made sense in theory, but they weren't actionable. And, so you can sift through literally thousands of poker training videos and articles and podcasts and books, you name it. But a lot of times, like you're just sifting through all of that stuff trying to find one gem.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
when you can find the outlier that has already sifted through all that stuff and created the change in his life, and come to me.
Absolutely, man.
So that's what I'm selling. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not charging $200 an hour for my time. I'm charging it
Yeah.
for my expertise.
Exactly.
And so basically, what I'm going to do today is direct you toward things that will actually benefit you and be worth your time to study.
Sweet. I'm excited.